Try to imagine all life as you know it stopping instantaneously and every molecule in your body exploding at the speed of light.
Total protonic reversal.
Protonic reversal.
Protonic reversal with your host, Conan Neutron. Broadcasting from a secret underground lair in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
A gigantic middle finger to everything that is rock about music, rock and roll, and corporate power.
The thing is, though, if you don't laugh, you're going to go on a killing spree with sharpened nails.
Competence of a hero or a fool. I wasn't exactly certain which.
Could not be more professional.
It means something. It means something.
You know, that's my take. What's yours?
Protonic reversal.
That's like a science thing, right?
Indeed it is. It is a science thing. This is a science place. It is a scientific fact that we're all up in your face. It is time once again for the one, the only Protonic reversal. Welcome to it. Entering year 13, the very quiet 12-year anniversary occurred last week. I didn't even notice. Whoops, my bad. Because, of course, I've been out on tour. I've been out on tour with Mighty Red Cross. If you didn't know that, now you know. But now I'm back, and we are in Podcastlandia, and I'm very pleased to be bringing you a bunch of new episodes as we enter year 13, lucky year 13. This is, of course, episode 455. Very excited to very shortly be talking to Nate Carson of Point Line Plain, Nanotear, Witch Mountain, Two Ton Boa, so many great things. He's an author, a very multifaceted individual that I have been pleased to know for many years. It's a long time coming for this one. But, of course, before we do any of that, welcome to Conan Neutron's Protonic Reversal. I'm your host, Conan Neutron. I'm a rock and roll lifer that's been touring and recording for 26 years, most known for the band Conan Neutron, The Secret Friends. Music is a huge part of my life, and I use the format of this very long-running podcast to talk about music with musicians whose work I enjoy and respect but may not be household names. This is episode 455. Now, if this is your first time listening to the show, archives of it are available for free. No ads, no sponsors, no kidding, protonicreversal.com. However, if you want to support the show and get episodes sooner, $1 a month at patreon.com/protonicreversal will achieve that goal. And if you like the show, even just a single episode, please feel free to like, subscribe on your platform of choice, share it around on the internet, even leave a review. All that helps people discover the show. It beats back the almighty algorithmic overlords, and it's just a darn nice thing to do. So there you go. All right. How was tour, Conan? Great. Next question. No, I could do a whole podcast of how wonderful the Red Cross tour was. It was really badass, but I'm not going to. We're doing this podcast now. So if you want to know more about that, I don't know, catch up with me on social media because this is all about Point Line Plain. Well, all about Nate Carson specifically, but mostly that Point Line Plain is back. Great band that reductively could be called synth punk, I suppose, but a little more than that. That came up around the same time I was doing stuff in Replicator. So I was very familiar with them, liked them a lot. They had a very unique sound, presence, a little bit ahead of their time. Doesn't always bode well for bands to be a little bit ahead of their time. We talked about pioneers that got scalped before, like Devo. But also Witch Mountain, fascinating. His time in Two Ton Boa, great. Nanotear booking has become like a force to be reckoned with. And, of course, he also writes books. So without any further ado, little ado maybe, let's bring him on. Nate Carson, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thanks for having me.
What'd I miss? I probably missed something, right?
Oh, man. I guess my FM radio show has been going on for about exactly as long as this podcast. So
I was gonna say you've been broadcasting. That's right. Like what a not game recognized game that was. Sorry.
No, that was great.
But yeah, I originally because I knew from Witch Mountain later, so I knew you from Point Line Plain when Point Line Plain was around the first time. And I guess the most recent news is that Point Line Plain is back and playing shows with Dazzling Killman, of course, playing Caterwaul. I know a thing or two about that. And that's a long time to come back to something, a long time to revisit a creative project. And the tempo's very different. Of
I've
course,
got
being a drummer.
new blisters, and I'm remembering how to play fast again. It's pretty funny because in Witch Mountain for the last 20 some years, I've been playing very slow, brutally heavy doom metal, 6/8 swing, 80 BPM, and all of a sudden I was like, oh wow, yeah, blast beats. I forgot about that, and
Right.
so we've made some like minor tempo tweaks. I think honestly, I'm into playing fast, but I no longer rush. So that's the big difference. Is the songs now
Uh-huh.
start and end at the same tempo, and that wasn't so much the way back in the day.
The drift, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I have no idea what you're talking about, by the way. But yeah, and it can be interesting when you revisit things from a younger you, where you're like, well, I definitely wrote that part, but what was I thinking exactly? Why was that the decision that I made?
We were fortunate that we were so well documented. I made a really specific effort with Point Line Plane to keep records of everything. So like I know every show we ever played
Yeah.
and who we played with, and there is an immense back catalog of recordings and a lot of videos that I actually paid to have digitized from like high 8 tapes and VHS. So as we were relearning these songs, I was able to go back and watch what I did on stage back then, and that was immensely helpful.
Oh, that's great, because then you have a visual cue from the best teacher possible, you.
Yeah. And it's so different than like learning a cover song because you're covering yourself. So
Yeah.
it's almost like this ghost of your past self inhabiting you, going, "Oh yeah, I can see why I did that," or, you know. But then there's other things that are baffling. I'm like, why did I not use my ride cymbal in Point Line Plane? And I can only imagine that it was because so much of Witch Mountain was like riding that bell,
And you want to do something different.
and
Yeah.
I wanted to do something different. So
Yeah.
Point Line Plane was my hi-hat band, and now I just don't have any concerns about any of these things, so anything goes.
Well, and you brought up something important that I think that maybe glossed over by most folks. That there's a lot of video documentation of the band, because of bands of that era, the late 1990s into 2000s, there isn't as much documentation. I mean, now it's like I can tell you from recent memory that we're trying to try out new songs live, and like, great, someone's filming the whole thing. Okay, great, awesome, no pressure, right? And then it's up there for forever. Whereas back in the day, I mean, I think Replicator was around for like almost a decade. I think there's like 2 shows that were filmed. They're on like DV cameras. They look like crap. They sound worse. But it's like that's like however many years of touring that we did, is that there's 2 shows and they're out there. One's like on Vimeo, which may as well be hidden in a VHS store.
Well, that's the thing. The flip side of how much documentation we had is that it's all in my office. It's not online.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and likewise, breaking up in 2000. Well, I don't know if breakup was the right word. We shelved it in 2005, and that was like just the dawn of social networking. So
Yeah.
even though this band, like, we had great publicists and we toured a lot and we got a ton of great press and critical acclaim. We got played by John Peel on his show. We were
I remember.
#1 on KDVS. But like, that's all kind of disappeared from the internet. Like, there's almost no digital footprint, and that is a big challenge of coming back now, because it's almost like we didn't exist in certain ways, even though we had a lot going on at the time.
Well, and I remember because I was there, and it's hard to describe. And I feel like some bands got, like, it was interesting socially to watch Les Savy Fab kind of come back, because it was like, yeah, that band was huge. Huge, but there was like no record of that because it's all on, like, whatever, MySpace or whatever was happening at the time, right? And like the digital, there was an article about this too. All the digital ephemera being not archival. There's entire bands like lost to history. There are bands like, no, that was like, they were like the biggest band in the world for like a month and a half, but you would never know because you can't even find anything on them.
Yeah, I mean, I have a file cabinet full of, the Wire magazine and alternative press and all this stuff that we were in that seemed like a big deal at the time.
It was huge for people from our world. Yeah, of course.
But it disappears. So
yeah, you want to be like, oh yeah, I was in the Wire. I'm like, what is that? The show? I'm like, no.
20 years from now, they'll be like, I've listened to that Protonic Reversal podcast so many times.
Yeah, right, exactly. I mean, I don't know. Who knows? The advent of everybody going to video is like a flabbergasting what I mean, but whatever. I just go with the flow at this point. But it's interesting how that operates and how that works, and what does and doesn't sort of get written into history. And because I remember when you were talking about bringing back Point Blank Plain, I was like, oh, that's awesome. But then, I was like, I went and looked and I was like, oh, I have my, my ripped MP3s off the CD that I have. But like, I was like, oh, is there stuff streaming? I'm like, oh, not really. And like, if so, like, people are not going to be probably looking for it unless they know to look for it. And so that's like this weird riddle of like, it almost gets, it's a band with all this history, but it's almost like a new band in some ways that has to be introduced to people.
That's the challenge. I mean, it's funny to be a band that played 150 shows and made 3 albums and countless comp tracks and played with all these amazing bands. And now we've got a brand new Instagram page that has 150 followers.
Right. Right. Because it's like starting from zero. And it's a thing where there's always going to be the diehards that are flying the flag or whatever. Like, for whatever reason, a lot of Eastern Bloc people, like, still talk about Replicator to this day. It's like, you're the only ones. I'm not even thinking about it. But other than those diehards, it's going to be something where it has all the history to it, and you're coming back to it, but it's going to be treated in such a way that you don't always have that difference. Mm-hmm. And that can be humbling for some people. Now, that said, you stayed with music the entire time. It's just not been with this band particularly, and I think you have a better handle on it than a lot of people, just because with Nanotear, you're booking bands all the time. The ebbs and the flows, and what does and doesn't work, and when does it doesn't float, so to speak. So you're very familiar with that world.
I mean, I can definitely say this wasn't a timed reunion by any means. I mean, I wish that we never stopped. I wish that we would have got back to it a long time ago.
Yeah.
But what it boiled down to was last September. I mean, Josh and I stayed really good friends. It was never any kind of dramatic breakup. We did so much in such a short time that we just kind of burned out and started doing other things. And I think the idea was to come back, but it just didn't really come around. Now it was really good timing for both of us, because both of our other projects are kind of on life support at the moment. And Josh texted me last September and he said, I had a dream that Point Blank Plain reunited. And I said, that sounds good. And we started making plans.
Let's do it. Yeah.
and that was really similar to why we were able to accomplish so much 25 years ago, because there were only 2 of us. It would be like, hey, yeah, I got a show offer. I'm available. Okay, it's booked. Like, it's
right.
not the
you have to check with 7 other people. Yeah.
Right. And their children and their wives.
Yeah. We'll have to see if how many PTO days I have,
Right.
Like,
and I'm not saying that certainly our lives are more complicated, and our schedules are not the same as they were when we were in our 20s, but it's still been a pretty easy process. Just like pick a rehearsal day, book the shows, work on it, and trade. We get interviews, we trade them back and forth, and it gets done. So it's been a pleasure.
Well, and yeah, and there's enough of the people that do know that there's going to be there's going to be interest in it. Now, whether it's going to be like I don't even know what would the equivalent of Pitchfork Media be today. Everything's so atomized. I don't think there is one, right? Like, but like the one of like these. Depressing to even say this, Facebook groups or something where it's just like you put it, but oh my god, so and so, I can't believe it. But it's, I feel like there's like 4 bands that it can get over that atomization of culture, that you don't have these monocultural moments anymore. And since you don't have that, it's good in a way, because stuff that's more niche can more easily rediscover, reconnect, or find an audience. But by the same token, it's completely different than how it was back in the day, in the same way, because there's just no chance of the monoculture. If anything that's left of it, it's all gigantic pop stars or something, and it's all stuff that has nothing to do with creativity half the time. So there is a bit of a challenge to it, but there's an excitement to it as well, because there's also people that never got to see it. And I think that's always... I always try to hammer that point home too, because I think that that's important, and I think it's important with the connection of a live show versus listening to music, because the act of listening to music for a lot of people is become more of a passive form of entertainment. And I think the immediacy of a live show, especially a band such as yourself, there's a lot of immediacy to what you do. There's a power to it that you're not going to get anywhere else. And so I'm excited that you guys you're doing all these shows with Dazzling Killman too. I mean, that's lovely. That's awesome. And I think there's going to be, you're going to blow some minds, right? And I think that's wonderful. But it's one of those things where like the risk involved of doing it is sort of like, wow, it's gonna be a lot of time away from like other things. I hope it works out for him. In the same way. And I know that there's the creative fulfillment of like, we like this band, we like this music, we believe in it, and that's always there. But you're not 18, 19 anymore, and there's always the other side of it, right?
Well, I think we can pick and choose what shows we want to do now in a different way. Back in the day, we wanted to play ferociously everywhere that we could, as often as we could, and make a name for ourselves, and that was what had to happen. And I don't see us getting in the van for 5 weeks at this point. I mean, unless some really crazy opportunity comes along, I think we'll just be like, for instance, in the Midwest, we're flying to Chicago and playing 3 shows with Dazzling Killmen, including Caterwaul, and going home. And that's like a perfect 3-day weekend for us. I mean, it will be, it'll be a concentrated amount of work, but it's something I know how to do, and I'm looking forward to it.
Well, and you're also going to be playing to, even for folks that don't know you, it's going to be your natural audience. It's going to be people that are going to be inclined to engage with something that they're less familiar with, and that's coming from like a quote unquote weirder place or whatever. Especially as something that, like, Witch Mountain is great, but Witch Mountain fits neatly into a genre.
Sure, it's the only
you know what I mean.
It's the only traditional band I've ever been in, and funnily enough, it had the most success that I've ever had. Even so, I still think Witch Mountain is a little bit of an outlier in the doom scene.
100%.
Because we do have, I don't know, we don't really sound like every other band. We do fit in the genre, but we're just not a cookie cutter band, and we also have been at it since '97. So it's like, I mean, I would not think to start a doom metal band in 2026, but I feel like, especially with the name Witch in the title, like it seems so comical now, but I think I'm grandfather claused in 28 years later.
You definitely get a pass, yeah. So, but I think that there's you said a few things there that I think are all very interesting, because even bands that are paragons of their genre, to me, usually the ones I like are the ones that are like, well, they kind of fit in there, but they kind of are doing something different instead. And that's always the case with me. And it doesn't matter what the genre is. Always someone's, well, I guess they're kind of that, yeah, okay. But and that's very much to my sensibilities and my interest. But I feel like and it used to be almost like, oh, they're just a such and such band, and that would be like an insult. Like, oh, you can just reduce them to just that. They're just this kind of band. And now I feel like people almost kind of go for it. Like, I've heard, man, there are bands that I like that unironically refer to themselves as grunge bands, and I'm like, really?
Yeah,
because I was around for that, and that wasn't. I mean, that was like a term of derision. Like, that was like meant like, not what you think it means. But then I stopped and think about it. I was like, well, that's okay, because I guess, like, words can change, and they're self-identifying in a way. And maybe I was being closed-minded about it because I was thinking of what it meant when I was in high school. Right? It meant something totally different.
Well, it's like, to a kid today, the 90s is how like the early 60s was when we were starting our bands. So it is just a different, I mean, kids that were born right when Point Line Plain broke up can come to these shows in bars.
Yeah. Anybody that made a mistake, or maybe not a mistake, when you guys were around the first time, the kids can come out. But it's also interesting because I saw, you very wisely put a little PR thing, it says something like synth punk, and it's just like, oh, yes, but that's so reductive. And it's and for us as artists and musicians, it can be so tough to just be like, okay, but then you gotta say the word. You gotta say the word to get in the door to a certain degree, to give people an idea of where you're coming from, and that's
I mean,
sure, synth punk, fine.
We tried a lot of different genre tags, and obviously we straddled a lot of genres. We never fit in with. We were able to play with a lot of different kinds of bands, which was great. But certainly when people started saying dance punk or electroclash or screamo, we were just kind of like, none of these things are what we're trying to do, even if we are somewhat adjacent to it, simply because there's keyboards or there's screaming or there's a dance beat here and there. Brutal Prog was another one. That,
which is that. I mean, that was all Weasel, I felt, but whatever, it stuck and it made sense. And there was always a darkness, kind of to what Point Line Plain did, which there was a lot of that just kind of hey, everybody, we're dancing now. Like, kind of, which, like, okay, I'm not against that. I'm just saying that isn't necessarily telling the whole story. What are the screamers, right? I mean, are they punk rock? I don't know. As I define it, sure. Do they have guitars? No, but it's definitely coming from like a intense and iconoclastic place too.
An amazing band that also was lost to history. Like, we literally learned about the Screamers after we started Point Line Playing and started doing research, saying like, who came before us?
Oh, wow!
Like,
yeah.
And so that was how we discovered the Screamers, and ended up. I think our very first release, besides our demo, was to be on the Screamers tribute album.
You know what? I know that, and I ripped the CD 2 months ago, and I forgot about it until you said it just now. But I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about this. I forgot this was a thing. Yeah, because I came pretty late to the game on that, right? And I was like, oh, why did I not know about this? I think it was it the Big Takeover? Somebody did like a big article on them. I can't remember what it was, but I was like, oh, I feel like I should know this. And I was like, oh, they never really recorded.
So now there's demos and there's live tracks, but their whole concept was they wanted to be different by making a movie instead of an album.
Yep.
And the movie never got finished. The album never happened. And then they broke up. And then they sort of get erased as being like, a queer-fronted, synth-driven 77 punk band from LA. They should be known the way X or the Circle Jerks 100%. Are known. But they sort of shot themselves in the foot by having different ambitions.
Which is funny because nowadays, that model would work perfectly. Yeah. Right? Like that would be you'd be people yearning for that. But yeah, I mean, I had Paul Rossler on, right? Like I definitely like at least he wasn't like the main guy or anything, but like I definitely like, all right, tell me everything you can about the Screamers, because
right,
because there's just not that much information out there necessarily, unless you were there, which I wasn't. But the reason I invoke the Screamers invoked, is because there's not a lot of precedent for the kind of thing that Point Line Playing does, unless you have a more open-minded version of what noise rock or post-punk or punk rock or whatever is, because there's stuff where it's like, there's common cause for this, and there's not common cause with that. And I felt like there was always like a deeply cinematic intensity to what Point Line Playing did. I feel like, again, usually a good amount of like darkness, but not like Bauhaus necessarily, but getting there, maybe some cape flapping, who knows? And there was that Black Flag style intensity of just like, you're there, this is what's going to be happening right now. And then that made sense to a certain degree because you fit somewhat well into the world that later became defined by like Hella and Lightning Bolt and things along those lines, even though like they didn't really sound like them. But it felt like there was common cause, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, definitely seeing Lightning Bolt was kind of an epiphany, but at the same time we were going and seeing early Sun shows, and there was a band from Brooklyn called Flux Information Sciences that really blew our minds. We saw the Peter Brotzman Tentet Plus 2 together at that time. There were just a lot of things happening. Orthrealm. There were just bands that were taking rock instruments and making like really avant-garde music with them. And we were like, this is cool, but we also like hooks. And so that was a big thing. We were like, we have a sound just by virtue of not having a guitar and being a two-piece, but let's use that sound to write songs because we liked songs. And that's what we did. But the songs happened to be mostly 2 minutes and really intense and in your face, and live that really came out.
Yeah, and that, sure, and of course, and the songs are what endures. I feel like, because I mean, I think a lot of times for me, there's like I say there's sound bands and there's song bands. Like some bands have a great sound, and hey, peace and love. Y'all love their show, love their sound, but like you couldn't name a song if I had a gun to my head, and some bands have great songs, but like it's like they just don't have it together as a sound band or even as a live band, maybe, and that's fine. Maybe it's not for you. Okay, that's totally okay. But I always felt like there was a lot of something that drew me to Point Line Playing is that, the songwriting was interesting. It wasn't just like, hey guys, do you like Suicide? The band, not the concept, which I do. But like, I've seen so many bands, I was like, oh, okay, is this going to be, do I know what this is? Like, oh no, I don't know what this is. This is something entirely different. And that's always kind of thrilling. And as much as there was a lot of different kinds of bands that were coming out and playing around then, I feel like there was a little bit of uniformity. It's like, oh, okay, so you like the Coach Whips, I see. Okay, so you're doing this is your this is your Coach Whips band. Right, fair enough. I understand. I know what that is. Great. Oh, and this is Lightning Bolt ripoff from this town. Okay. Just like every town has a Melvins ripoff. They rip off one of the 25 things that band does. Every band has a shellac ripoff that rips off one of the 17 things that band does. So on and so on.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm proud that I don't think we could ever be pigeonholed like that, because we're just,
no,
to me, the best bands sound like the combination of the members of the bands. It's not just like we had a whiteboard and said, this is what we're going to do. It was like when Josh and I came together from kind of our different worlds, this is what came out of us. And we tried lots of different types of songwriting and techniques, and we're experimenting constantly and really just trying to satisfy ourselves.
In the grand tradition of think of a band like Wire or something. When you say a band sounds like Wire, like, well, what do you mean? What era? Do you mean like Chairs Missing? Do you mean 1-2-XU? You're talking about the goth stuff. Like, are we talking about like what like? And for a band that has any staying power creatively, you need to push yourselves and try different things. And I felt like that was something that you guys were pretty darn good at, and it just got to the point where it was like, it sounds like them, and that's, to me, that's the greatest compliment that can be given to an artist.
It is. I love it. I mean, I think if anything, we were pushing so hard and fast that we started to get ahead of our audience. Like, we were building an audience, and then we sort of pulled the rug out from under them, just because we reacted to some of the terms that people were using to try to pigeonhole us. So we said, okay, let's do an about face and make a very different kind of record. And it wasn't received as well, even though, I'm still proud of it and I think it's cool.
I think it's a better record, frankly. But I mean, but it's also, I remember at the time where it was like, oh no, that's not what they're doing. They're not doing those things. Like, it's something entirely different. But people just hear the signature, instrumentation, or like some facile comparison where if you're not listening too closely, oh, okay, that I'll categorize that with this. It's no, not really though, not really. And I think that's natural. And whatever, I used to work at a record store. I get it. Everyone does that a little bit to a certain degree. It's like, it's sanity making, but I think the great example on both sides, it would be Liars.
Of course.
Right. That's.
They sort of showed us the way. I mean, we saw their 0 review for that second album, which is my favorite Liars record. And I just thought, that's brilliant. That's so cool. Like, because they were poised to be kings of a certain scene, and they immediately did something different. And we thought, well, that'll work for us too. But it's fine, Like, I mean, what we're really finding now is that we're going back to the archives and these live shows, and there was a small body of work we created at the end of the first phase before we made the change that never got recorded, because at the time we felt like, oh, well, this is kind of more of the same. But really what it was the most advanced and best versions of what we had been doing in the early days. So we're bringing some of those songs back, and I have a feeling we'll end up recording some of them, because it just felt like that was... that was the evolved version of the early version of the band. Sure,
absolutely. And there's certainly other contemporary X Models. That's another one, like they had that sort of like shellac plus like television and talking heads with like super ADD. Okay, great. And then like, oh no, we're going to make like fun industrial songs now. That's okay. I mean, that's cool too. That's a very kind of like an interesting about face, but you could have just kept doing this and everyone would have loved it, because, it's like bratty as hell and the songs work because the songs are there. But I think that's fascinating. Like, I think of a band, I wouldn't call myself a fan, but like a band like King Gizzard, right? And the Lizard Wizard. They're like, what are they? Oh, they're doing a prog record now, or a funk record, or whatever. And good on them, and for all the music that presumably gives enjoyment to their crowd. They're just doing whatever they want to do. And now no one bats an eyelash about that. Like, all right, that's just what they do. Right on. Whereas I feel like there was more. Oh, go ahead.
They made that part of their identity, I think. And
right. It was built. It was baked into the concept. Yeah.
And now they've picked up the Fish and Grateful Dead audience and are ginormous. So, like,
good for
more
them.
Power to them. And it's cool that they're making metal records for Deadheads.
Yeah, you got to hand it to them. It's like, all right, they're sneaking in a bunch of weird stuff. over the transom, right?
There's also a minor connection there because Michelle Cable, who used
Michelle
to
Cable, yeah.
do Panache magazine. I mean, that was sort of like her high school zine, and she was a big Point Line Plane fan and very supportive of us. And now she's Gizzard's manager.
I haven't talked to her in so long, but she was the
so
reason why so many of our bands played, Humboldt, and like why, and that zine was great. And you could just tell.
Yeah.
I mean, I always say that whatever it was, you could tell that she was going to do something big.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, she did.
No, I'm so happy for her. It's great. Like she's really successful, and she was so smart at such a young age. It was obvious.
It's really funny if you stop and think about it. And it's one of those things where like I'll forget sometimes, like, oh yeah. And I still have like the old Panache scene, right? I still think so. I did a big zine purge a couple of years ago, but I was like, oh, I'm saving these, obviously. Anyway, having nothing to do with Panache or Michelle. Tell me how Point Line Plane came to be. Because Witch Mountain actually predates Point Line Plane, if I remember correctly. Right?
Yeah, Witch Mountain started in '97, and we had a pretty good. Well, at first it was tough because Doom was just an unknown quantity.
Yeah, like late '90s, right? So that's
1997, and at that time in Portland, it was so uncool to have a full stack or to play guitar solos or to have double bass or any of that stuff. And so, we were lumped in as why would you play slow on purpose? Like people were just baffled by that. But it was what we wanted to do. It was what we liked. And it was really the only time I've ever set out to play within a genre, even though we brought in a lot of Melvins and Jesus Lizard and Butthole Surfers and et cetera into our sludgy doom metal. But after a couple of years, that scene did start to pick up. Queens of the Stone Age came out, and all of a sudden there was just more interest in that style of music. And so we started playing with Electric Wizard when they would come through town, and Orange Goblin and High on Fire started, and these were all just people that we'd play a show together, they'd sleep on my floor, and it just was the beginnings of that scene. But around 2002, 2003, Witch Mountain had done some touring and had made an album and was just kind of like, this is a band that has sort of ebbed and flowed for 28 years. And that was the first time where it just sort of was on an ebb. It was like, all right, we did a bunch of work. Everybody's kind of tired and wants to do other things. And I was really interested in playing another style of music. Josh and I had been friends for a few years and really admired each other's bands. And both became sort of available at the same time. And he wanted to do something heavier and crazier, and I wanted to do something a little bit more pop-oriented than I had been doing. And not that Point Line Plane is a pop band, but it was definitely a hooky, song-oriented band. And so this was just sort of the middle ground where we found each other, and we had, we had an easy time of it because it was like basement space was free and available in 2002 in Portland, and there were all kinds of cool bands cropping up all the time, and almost limitless opportunities to play shows at different clubs and DIY spaces. And we had a small footprint. We could easily play on the floor in the middle of the room with just the two of us.
Yeah.
And so we did.
So what world was Josh coming from? Because you mentioned that you kind of come from different places. Obviously, he's not coming from the Witch Mountain, Nasket Doom world at all.
No, he was like a minister's son who got into The Cure in high school and started playing in pop bands. But when I say pop, they were more towards like post-rock, but they were really good. They were like, he had this band like basically right out of high school called Delano, like named after Roosevelt's middle name.
Yeah.
But they were like really nerdy, kind of sci-fi lounge types. I don't know. It's hard to describe, and that's why I liked it. And then he started a more Chicago post-rock type band called the Kremlin Bronx that featured Mark Burden, who was later in Scientist. And they were awesome. And they got to open for some cool shows. And I think they made a 7-inch or something, and then that kind of caved in. And that was right at the same time that I was like, hey, I've got more free time. And we just got along, and our heads met in a lot of places. We were nerds, and we were really into science fiction and really into music and all kinds of music. And so it just was something that we had talked about for a few years. I think he was 18 when I met him, and I was 20 or something like that. And when we started Point Line Playing, I guess I would have been 28, something like 28, 29.
Well, and it seems like there's a deep and rich interiority to the Point Line Plane world that, for the curious, it seems like you can like dive like further into it. But like what you would see on the surface would just be like like a small tip of the iceberg, so to speak. And that's not every band is like that. A lot of my favorite ones are, but like not every bands are like that. Sometimes like what you see, oh yeah, that's pretty much what you get. They're those guys playing that music, and that's all it is. But I feel like there was definitely for lack of a better term, like a literate, a literate nature to what Point Line Plane was doing. Not that you were being like Blood Hag or something and playing libraries, but just like having like a deep understanding of like lore and building lore and funneling the things that you were interested in, musical and otherwise, into this outlet and kind of reconciling how to square the circle on all those things, and kind of coming forward fully formed with your own sort of ethos, worldview, and presentation.
I mean, I couldn't say it better than that. I think that
Great,
we were
show's
both,
over.
we're both book readers. We both loved obscure films. So often I find that people are really into obscure music, but they watch Marvel superhero movies as their favorite, or they love obscure music, but they just read Stephen King. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with popular, culture. I love the Beatles, like absolutely.
Of course.
Are
you in a band? You probably like the Beatles,
Yeah, I would hope.
Well, imagine if you write
so,
songs.
It's not no knock against that, but we were interested in obscure and weird corners of all these different media, and so that's just a lot to draw from. And then all of a sudden, what influences are on display aren't just the same ones that everybody else has. And I think anytime you set out to sound like your favorite band, you're like 18 months behind them from the get-go, because whatever you've heard from them, they were conceiving 2 years priar.
They're on to something else entirely different now, right? Exactly. Yeah. If they're worth the salt, yeah, absolutely. And that's another thing that seems to have changed socially too, is that now it's like, oh, we're this kind of band. It's like, okay. I mean, I don't want to name names, but there's bands where it's like, yeah, I've got that Zeppelin record too. Like, what are we doing? Mm-hmm. Like, do you think other people don't have that? But I've seen that happen with like other more obscure bands too, where it's like, do you think people just don't know that band? Is that what you're betting on? And then what I realize is people don't care. Most people don't care. Most people are not thinking that closely about it.
It's a tribute to whatever they love, and they just want to participate in that tradition. Yeah. And that's valid if you want to be a Weekend Warrior type band or play, just regionally. I think the bigger problem than piracy or downloading is just that there are literally too many bands. There are
so many.
There
should be a higher barrier of entry, in my opinion.
What I want to see is a government grant where if you get $10,000 to break up and never reform, and if it's worth that to you, please get out of the way.
Okay, I'm for this platform. I'm totally for it because, there's other hobbies, right?
I would never discourage anybody from playing music and having a good time.
Oh, of course not. Yeah.
But the problem is you get these bands with their Guitar Center backlines and new vans clogging up the touring circuit, and it's if you're not even drawing 50 people at home, you should not be going out on the road. And I say this as an agent because I see it all the time. The tour circuit is really clogged up, and I don't know, maybe
it's too easy.
Yeah.
Like none of these bands ever had to go through a copy of Book Your Own Fucking Life.
Mm-hmm.
They never had to like cold call someone. Oh, did you get that tape I sent you? And it shows.
I do feel fortunate. I never had to book a tour by payphone. Like I just missed out on that. It was the early adoption of email.
Missed out, yeah. Well, because for the longest time, and this is crazy to think about, but for the longest time, like not everyone had email, like for venues. It was one of those things where you had to call. I mean, it wasn't my favorite thing in the world, but whatever.
No,
we had our ways.
Give a cassette to the door guy. And
right.
Pass
totally.
it along to the booker. and then they would call you and say, "Hey, I liked your tape. You know, you want to come play new band night?"
Yeah.
And I remember being just savvy enough to say, "No, we don't want to do a new band night. If you have a national act come through, we would love to open for them. Let me
Great.
know." And that's how Moon Patrol got on the Servotron show, and that was my first show at Satyricon, and it really, was snowballed from there.
See, Booker brain was already in effect. You just didn't know it yet.
Yep. Yep.
No, but
Well,
that's
Booker brain comes from being a dungeon master.
Oh, okay. Explain, because I think that's
Well,
interesting.
Well, when I was in high school as a dungeon master, I would take a group of people with complementary skill sets and draw a map and send them out on an adventure in search of riches, rewards, and fame. And so I feel like as an agent, I'm really just continuing to be a dungeon master, but in the real fantasy world.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. Touring as DMing. Yeah, I can get down with that. Sure. Yeah. So what would be your modifiers? Like, what would be your what esoteria would be like a +5 to save against, I don't know, tire damage or whatever would be?
I mean, I tell all my bands, I'm like, I am a wizard, but I do not yet have weather control, and I cannot save your transmission.
Yeah, ain't that the truth?
Once I have those powers, I'll be unstoppable.
Exactly. Well, but it's interesting that you had that level of foresight with just to be like, hey, we're not just going to be like a new band night, like it's like we want to. You want to call your shot a little bit, like and that's self-selection, which I feel like some bands like are like nervous or wary of. It's self-selection is important.
I think that it's as long as you're polite and standing up for yourself and not being an egotistical jerk about it. Yeah. Having that self-respect, people recognize that immediately. Like if you will just take whatever opportunity you're given, you come across as desperate. Whereas if you're like, hey, I really appreciate that, but I'd rather wait for something better, almost always something better comes along. So, I mean, yeah, sure, there's times where I've passed on an opportunity and regretted it, but not that many.
Yeah. I still remember to this day, there was the write-up. I'm not going to say what the band was, but the conceit of the write-up was they'll play anywhere. Yeah. Like they'll basically the whole write-up, and there was like, whatever, a whole paragraph write-up, like, yeah, they have no standards. They'll play anywhere. I'm like, oh my God, that's yikes. And those guys were like, whatever, it's true, we do. I'm like, oh, okay.
Well, there's also bands you see that are the opening act on 5-band tour packages year after year after year, and they never actually get anywhere. And it's like, yeah, they're on the road all the time, but the people coming to those shows aren't there to buy their merch.
Yeah, and they're probably showing up after their set,
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. There's something to be said for being introduced to a new audience if you parlay that into something. But
I mean, Witch Mountain, one of the best things we ever did was we were the first of 5 band on a Danzig tour. And honestly, we were the band that sounded most like Danzig. So the people who were there early really liked us. And we did, pick up an audience from that. And it was a good experience, even though it was difficult because like going out for 5 weeks as the first of 5 and chasing a bus in a van, like all of that was hard. But I would do it again just because, fucking Danzig asked us to come along. So we did.
Yeah. What are you going to say here, right? Yeah.
He really looked out for us. So.
Well, and there are certain times where you're like, all right, so there's a possibility we might be going to the meat grinder right now, but we're going to do this because of X, Y, and Z. I mean, dude, we just did it with the Buzzcocks. We played, with the Red Cross tour, we played with Buzzcocks. They were amazing, but we had a 20-minute set. And I was like, well, I'm glad just to have that. Whatever. We got 20 minutes. Like, this band kills. Let's just do it. And you know what? We fucking slayed it. We slayed it. And people were like, oh my God, I had no idea. And I was like, oh, great. So it worked out great for us. But it was like one of those things where it's like, that can go the other way too, where it's like, okay, everyone shows up late. And, oh, there was another band? Oh, well, whatever.
Yeah, we had those nights for sure.
And you got it. That sucks on the best of days, but like, when you're doing like the van chasing the bus thing where it's like, oh, like that can be a little of a demoralizer.
Yeah,
but
load
it can pay off too.
Load-ins at 3 p.m. so that you can sit there for 3 hours and watch us sound check.
Yeah.
After your 8-hour drive. But,
right, exactly, anyway. Of course. Well, but that's the glamour, baby. That's the road. And I think that's there's no wrong way to do it, right? And it's all about what you. So first of all, what it's really all about is if there's any there. Because for a band that's just, maybe they have the look, maybe they have the sound, but they don't like play with any intensity. You know, I think back to Miles Davis's critiques of Steve Miller. Right?
The gangster of love, we call him.
Exactly. Yeah. And it was like one of those things where it's like, he's totally right, because, you know, it's very, you know, it's pleasant, it's consonant, it checks all the boxes for the things, and there's absolutely zero danger to any part of it whatsoever. And there's zero intensity to it. And I could see being a Miles Davis, he'd be like, this guy? I'm playing with this guy? And being like mad at the concept of it. Because it's like, well, clearly you don't understand what it is I do if you're pairing me up with this dude. By all accounts, Steve Miller's fine, by the way. Like, he's probably a totally fine guy. I'm just saying.
We opened for a band called The Fire in Point Line Plain. I think in 2004, we opened for a band called The Fire Theft, which Jeremy Enoch was the front person.
William Goldsmith as well, who has been on the show a couple times. Yeah.
Our second keyboard player, who was only with us for a short time, he spent that whole show just like flipping them off from the audience. Me and Josh were like, no. We just shared the stage with this band. Like, we're on a bill together. You can't do that. But he was just like, this is the most bland bullshit. Like, I don't want anything to do with this.
I have a similar story in Replicator. It wasn't somebody in the band. It was somebody, like, it was a friend of ours. I'm not going to say what the band was, because I think the band is fine. But I was surprised at the passionate intensity to which they were flipping the band off for the entire set. I'm like, wow, that's commitment to the bit right there. But they were really mad. It does happen. So getting back to formation, so Witch Mountain, going around doing stuff, you know, want to do something different with Point Line Plain. How do those initial practices? Is it all right there from the beginning? Does it take a little while to put together?
I mean, we spent most of 2001 working on it before we came out live. So we were definitely kind of just like mad scientists in the laboratory. We had a lot of different rehearsal spaces. The first one was the basement under this house I was renting in Northeast Portland. And it was a room just big enough for two people. And it was very raw. Right. But, you know, it was 2001 and it was kind of like the gentrifying ghetto and nobody cared. And so we did it. And we definitely wrote songs that we ended up throwing away because we were just trying to figure out what our sound was. And I think the first song that we were like, this is Point Line Plain, is called Open Your Mind Light. And it's on the first album and it's on the first demo. And we were just like, this sounds like nothing else that we've heard, and yet it's totally satisfying to us. And so that was kind of the light bulb moment where we're like, okay, interesting. Like, what else can we do that's springboards off of this, but is not like Open Your Mind Light Part 2? Because we never did. We didn't really write songs like, let's do another one like that one. It was more like, oh, let's be inspired and move on to the next. So, you know, that's what I recall. And then I think it was must have been early 2002. I'd have to go back and look at when exactly the first show was, but we got offered a show with this emo band called Mile Marker. Which was that Frigid Form Cell era Mile Marker or earlier? Whatever 2002 was happening with them. But I just knew, I was like, okay, this is a cool club and it's with a popular band. There's going to be a couple hundred people there and we don't want to blow this. And so actually went to Satyricon and asked to play New Band Night, but under a fake name. So we played the Monday night at Satyricon, like as a no-name band, and both the music editors from the Willamette Week and the Portland Mercury came to see us that night.
Oh, wow.
And I just thought, this is auspicious. I think things are going to go well for this band. I think, because the music editors wanted to know, what is Josh Blanchard and Nate Carson's band going to sound like when they're together? Because we had both been kind of, you know, we had both moved to the big city, moved to Portland, him from Salem and me from Corvallis, to make noise. And a lot of our friends moved at the same time and just weren't as gregarious as us and weren't as driven, I think. And that's why it went so well. We were kind of the guys in our own bands that were like that motivated. So together, it was a very equal partnership in that way. Like, we were both constantly booking shows. And in fact, Josh came up with the name Nanotear while we were on a tour. He was like, oh, I cry a Nanotear. And I thought, oh, that's so great. And
that's great.
We talked about starting a booking agency together, but ultimately he wanted to do something else. And so I ran with it. But that definitely came from a day in the van. But yeah, so we played that show at Satyricon and then played, I think, a day or two later with a mile marker in front of 200 people, and it went really well. And we just were like, okay, now we've got a full set. We can see, you know, what material we enjoy and kind of cut the fat out, dropped a couple of songs that weren't really doing it for us, and never looked back and started just playing like crazy. I think the first year we might have played Portland 30 times.
Right, and for people that know you guys, it can be like a chocolate and peanut butter situation where it's like, oh, what's that band gonna be like? You know, that's interesting, and the reason I specifically asked about mile marker is that I looked it up. The Frigid Form Cells record is 2000, quite good. That's
cool.
to me is their high watermark. Like it's like, oh my god, and then I was like, is the rest of it gonna be this good? And it wasn't.
No.
but that record especially like definitely transcends beyond like whatever emo or whatever. Like it's like weird and cool and kind of like a lot of things like Drive Like Jehu and whatnot they would do, but kind of with early combination of like digital instrumentation, but not in a way that anyone else was doing. And then that seemed to last about a year, and then they, you know, a couple members left, and then they were doing something else, and good on them. But but so it may have been after that. But that record is like
okay. I'll have
cool.
to go back and check it out. I mean, honestly, I never really followed them. We took the show because we knew it was going to be a great
huge
way
show.
to
Yeah,
get our names out there.
Yeah.
But we did end up opening for a lot of bands that we did identify with, and like, I mean, I remember playing with Erase Errata or Oneida or Deerhoof, and those bands, you know, were really kind to us and really appreciated what we were doing, because I think they would go out on the road and probably have lame support bands.
Oh
often.
yeah, be like exactly top dollar best. You would get the aforementioned, like, you know, crappy Melvin's ripoff band that does one thing that they do, or the crappy shellac band that does one thing they do, and that'd be a treat compared probably to, you know.
So these are,
you
know, fine artists that we're recognizing, like, oh, these guys are into something odd and original, and they would definitely kind of pat us on the head, and we loved it.
Yeah, and so you find kind of common cause with other artists that are, you know, more idiosyncratic. They're doing their own thing as well, and you're pushing forward with your own thing. When you, because at some point you add on, it was before Smoke Signals that you add on, you become a 3-piece, right? So what was the rationale with that?
Well, we felt like we had done a significant amount of recording and touring as a duo, and we started thinking, you know, what if we add another keyboard? Like, how much more will that fill out the sound? What would that be like to have another person? And the first thing we did was we got hired to write the soundtrack for a documentary about haunted houses. So that was the first thing we did as a trio.
Which rules.
And yeah, and so that material's never come out, but I think hopefully it will one of these days, because it was a fun thing to do. It was a really great project. And so, but we took the money to record the soundtrack, but we also basically demoed Smoke Signals at the same time in the same sessions. And some of those songs are in the movie and some of them are not, but it was an opportunity to, you know, have somebody else pay for studio time for us to demo material.
It's always a win. Always a win. Yeah.
And
as long as you hold the rights to it.
That being the case, then we were able to, you know, because we didn't have very much money ever. And so when it was time to make Smoke Signals, we found a way to, we went to Michael Astra's Smegma Studios and recorded the drum tracks, and then took those drum tracks to my brother's studio where we had recorded the Haunters soundtrack and recorded all the vocals and keyboards, and then mixed it there. So, and we did play live as a trio, and I have some videos of it, but honestly, like, the live thing almost came to a halt. And the third guy we had, he's a lovely guy and he's a good friend of ours to this day, but he did not really enjoy playing live that much, and he didn't like learning songs. He was more like a jammer. He was really great at synthesis and tones and improvising, but once it came time to be like, no, you need to do this part 6 times and then change, and he'd be angry about that. So we finally shed him and went back to being a duo, and that's when we started touring aggressively again. And then by that time, it was like Smoke Signals was out. People were less enamored with it. The shows didn't feel like they were growing in the way that we wanted to, and we just kind of put it on the shelf. And it was It's unfortunate because I really believe that if the band had stuck around a few more years or had just stayed around forever, we'd be going to Europe every year. We'd be going to Australia.
Sure.
We'd be
Yeah.
invited to all the cool festivals and things like that. But, you know, instead we're having to remind people that we even existed.
Which is weird, right?
Yeah.
And there's something to be said for that, just the endurance of being a constant, whether you're doing road work and then making the record, road work, making the record, or whatever, however you decide to go about it, but just being a presence, just sticking around as these new walled gardens come about and these new methodologies of people finding out about things or not in some cases come out. And just being able to adapt to them in real time rather than rediscovering your audience.
Yeah, I mean, we had a MySpace like right at the end of the band. Like we had a
Yeah,
MySpace
yeah.
for a matter of months, and then that's you can't find that anymore. So we never had an opportunity to migrate to another platform and leave that footprint. But whatever, we'll start. The archives are immense, so once people start paying attention, I can start posting flyers from all these cool shows that we played and videos and whatever.
Yeah.
So it'll be there, but we kind of want to focus first on what we're doing right now, which is reissuing the first record, which has just got remastered and put on vinyl for the first time, which is exciting, and getting back on stage. And that's the very first show as of this recording is literally tomorrow.
Right, exactly. So this is going to be out to the world at large. It will have already happened, but in our personal timeline, it has yet to happen. And I think that's interesting. I mean, how did working with Skin Graft come about?
That's a good question. I know we were looking for a label. We had been chasing Ben at Load Records for a while, and he was really friendly and liked us, but never committed. And man, I'd have to ask Mark if he remembers exactly. I mean, we probably just reached out to him, and he liked the record. We sent him that first record, and he liked it. And then he offered us a deal to make a second record, and so we took it. The other thing that's funny is that
that had that crazy, the really ornate packaging, if I remember correctly.
It had the largest poster fold out like anyone had ever tried to make. And in fact, the first printing they had to throw away because the posters literally wouldn't fit in the wheel case. So they had to throw them out and reprint them all on thinner weight paper. And I was like, well, just send us the posters. We'll give them out. They're like, oh no, we trashed them. I'm like, great, thanks.
This is when you got to remember around this era too. The CDs were the thing, and like vinyl, it had to be like someone that was like the deepest of deep nerdery for vinyl. Like it just didn't move in the same way that it does now.
We had one 7-inch, and that was the only, and that was my first time on vinyl, I believe.
Yeah. Which I think
so we were excited about that.
But I'd have to look. But it's interesting that when you think about that and all these going back to like the lost era of the 2000s, right? Because I was in the Skin Graft, it was an E group before it was a Yahoo group, which try explaining any of that to a millennial, by the way. But anyway, and it was like, there's Rob and Mark are on there, and you got Nick Sakes is on there, and like all these people that like some of which I still know to this day. But it was like in the same thing, like the the International Noise Rock Underground and then Spock Morgan stuff. There are these like little uber niches of like nerds, like ostensibly emailing back and forth to each other about different things, and it was a prototype for online communities that exist now. In a way, it was a little bit purer, I think, because it was actually the ability to communicate with everybody. But it was a beginning of this connection with other like-minded people that don't live in your geographical area, which was the initial promise of the internet that quickly was subverted by corporations and the algorithm. But that's how you came to my attention. That's how we came to know each other.
We definitely made a lot of friends from the Spock Morg board.
Yeah,
I remember that, and a lot of those bands would come through, and we would help them with shows in Portland and vice versa.
Yeah, and it's interesting because that does happen now, but it's on this is a weird almost Disneyland version of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably the wrong way to put it, but
it's a free for all.
Yeah, it's like okay, it's not like how it was where it felt smaller, complimentary. like higher quality, lower quantity. Now it's just like higher quantity, higher everything. There's higher quality as well, but you don't notice it because there's so much more of everything. So, all right. So that's the world that you guys are in around that time for Smoke Signals. You start hitting it hard again. Tell me which comes first, the Diamond Hands Point Line Plane record or playing with Two Ton Boa?
Oh, definitely. Two Ton Boa was after Point Line Plane stopped playing. I think it might have been probably 2 years later that I had been a big fan of that Two Ton Boa EP. I loved it so much, and I was so sad when I discovered that they had broken up. Like I heard it too late, and I thought, oh man, what a bummer! I'll never see this band. They're only from Olympia, so close by, and what a great record. And then I think it was must have been 2006 or 7. They announced a show in Portland, and I was like, oh hell yeah, I'll be there. And while I was there, I introduced myself to them, and I said, if you ever need an agent, and they were like, we need an agent and a new drummer. And I was like, well, that's funny.
I know a guy that does both those things, and it's me.
So I ended up playing with them for 7 years. There's only one single that we recorded at that time because they had just made a new album with a session drummer. So I'm in the music video, but I'm not actually on the album.
The
Cash
Parasiticide.
Machine.
Cash Machine.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna say which I fucking lung covered that on our split with them.
Oh no way.
Yeah. Well, and originally we have the knife cover that we did. It sounds like Thin Lizzy. That was going to be on there, but it wasn't anyway. But like, they were like, "Oh, do you want to do Cash Machine?" It's like the Two Ton Boa song. Like, hell yeah, go do that. That's awesome. I'd love that.
That's really
song.
Cool.
Because the whole Parasiticide record's great. I mean, it was like a revelation. And then I was lucky enough. I caught one of the times that you guys came through Oakland. I saw the show and I was like, "This is what the hell? This is crazy. This is like a different band, but in a good way. Like it was presented as this huge thing." But it was still like incredibly hooky. I think it brought out the best parts of Sherry's voice and presence, like in a really like kind of cool, very methodical way. Like I was like, this band's gonna be hit big. Nope,
didn't happen. I mean, the ultimate thing that we did get to do was
and I had only ever seen you play with Point Line Plane at this point, by the way, too. That's the other thing I should mention. So I was like, oh, it's got a totally different style. That's crazy. It's awesome. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, I mean, I had to learn to play. Sherry wanted Two Ton Boa drums to be exactly like the record, so that was something I had to learn. And also, there's no cymbals; it's all broken junk sculptures.
Great Tom Waits kind of style,
which was cool. I mean, I really enjoyed that because I had played in a more industrial band when I was younger, anyway. So I was very big into Neubauten and Savage Republic and Crash Worship and Hitting Birth and those bands. So that was a natural fit for me. But we did a lot of touring, and eventually the Dresden Dolls took us out on a big theater tour, those were the last major shows I did with them, because it was just like, how do you follow up playing to 1,500 people every night and go back to playing to 50? And
half of which only know who you are, right? And it's like,
but I actually just today was over at Scott and Sherry's house because they print the Point Line Plane T-shirts.
Oh, that's awesome!
Yeah,
that's great.
So it's cool to see them.
I'd love to have either of them on this show, but I don't think I've ever asked them. So, but huge fan of that band. I think that era of the band is especially interesting, and like I think it was like coin flip as to whether it would like go like beyond that world or not, and came up tails. But
we had label/manager problems, and unfortunately, that just kind of put a knife through the heart a little bit. But we're all good friends. It happens. Like I said, I was hanging out with them today, and I think they have new music recorded and are going to be doing some shows in the future. Scott had been playing with Unwound for the last couple of years.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's been pretty busy. Yeah.
It
is a very insular world, isn't it?
I would love to see Two Ton Boa as a fan, because I really only saw them once when I wasn't in the band. And,
right. Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Why not? Right.
Yep.
So around, so we're talking like around that era, well, didn't James, Sincere Brutality, James Squeaky, didn't he like put out originally before Skin Graft got to it the Crystal?
So it was a
bands?
joint effort between the Sincere Brutality and Zeroid Records out of Seattle, which was who had done the Screamers tribute. So
That's
they
right.
both
That's right.
put
Okay.
in half the money, and never got it back.
Well, I always loved that cover. I thought that cover was so like kind of cool and unique looking.
Yeah, E-Rock, Eric Mast, he's an amazing artist and a really great guy, and he did the art for both of those albums, as well as some T-shirt designs and a music video. That was a Flash animated music video, which also there's no way to view that anymore.
Lost to the internet 2.0, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy that how much stuff is just like not even known. That it's like, how do you even port it over? I don't know. Can you? Probably it wouldn't be in the same way. But
Well, he had lost it too because his drive with his animations had gotten corrupted, and I just thought, oh man, that video was so cool, and we'll never see it again. But I was able to get on the Internet Archive Wayback Machine.
oh yeah,
And I
sure.
and I found the Flash file, and he was able to export it to a 1080. So that's also going to be coming.
That's
in the
great.
near
I can't wait.
future.
I mean, I saw it when it came out, but like, Jesus Christ, how long ago was that?
It's awesome.
That's great.
Like our only video is a cartoon, but it is awesome. So
Yeah,
I'm really
yeah.
love that.
Yeah, hey, at least there's some documentation of it. I mean, it's like better than it being lost to the sands of time.
Yeah,
so to
that would have
speak.
been sad.
Yeah, and that's happened to far too many bands, unfortunately. So the Nanotear, when does it go from being like a thing you do to being like, oh, it's a thing you do? Like how because you were doing it to me, and I say this again just to give more information about myself. I've always self-booked by choice, right? It's something I generally enjoy doing, and I feel personally that unless someone else can do it, providing better results than I can, with connections that I don't have, they're not going to have the same level of interest I have in booking this kind of thing. And so then there's some exceptions to that. Obviously, the bigger tours, I've not booked, and so on and so on. But generally speaking, that's how I go about it. That makes me very unique. No people, nobody really does that. Everyone hates booking. I really hate booking. Almost everybody hates booking. You don't need to say that. That's like something like, oh, you know what? It gets wet when it rains. Yeah, we all know. We all know it's annoying. So, but I've had people over the years like, oh, you're really good at this. You should be a booking agent. I'm like, no, I shouldn't. Because I do this so I can do the other things. I'm getting through a task so I can do it. But I'm always fascinated by people that like not only are good at it, such as you are, but like that have found what makes it interesting or cool, the challenge, the puzzle, the adventure of it, so to speak. So tell me of the travels.
Sure.
The DMing travels of becoming a booking wizard.
Well, I mean, the first tours I booked were for Witch Mountain, and at that time it was like there was one doom band in each state, and that was the circuit. We would all hook each other up with shows.
Yeah.
It was a little community, and I guess I should step back even a little bit before that. In the late 90s, I had a part-time gig as webmaster for the Billions Corporation, which was a very heavyweight agency out of Chicago. They booked Jesus Lizard and Manor Astro Man and Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, et cetera, et cetera. And so I wasn't working in any kind of agent capacity, but I was taking their tour dates and posting them and looking at routings and seeing what the venues were and seeing the directions that people went. So that kind of sunk in. And then I started booking Witch Mountain tours, and then I started booking Point Line Plane tours with Josh. And then a band called Yob out of Eugene said, hey, will you book a tour for us? And I did, and they came home with money. And my wife at the time said, did you charge them? And I said, no. And she's like, well, maybe you should. And I was like, that's actually a good idea.
That's a decent observation, yeah.
Yeah. Because I just thought I was doing that as a favor for my friends, not that they were actually going to be as viable as they were. But Yob obviously has become, a worldwide force and, one of my favorite bands ever.
Well, they build a very devout following as well by doing the work. which
And
which
by
is
being, you can't say they're a generic stoner doom band. I mean,
no,
Yob
no.
has
Yeah,
their
far from it.
own sound by far. They transcend the genre significantly. But so Nanotear really formed out of booking tours for Witch Mountain, Yob, and Point Line Plain. And at a certain point, I was like, okay, I'm actually kind of good at this. I'm good at emailing. I'm good at communicating. I'm diplomatic. I like to travel. I am aware of what the circuit looks like. And so I started doing it. And basically, there was a week in 2004 when I decided to take it seriously and open an agency. And there was another agent in the Bay Area who had just basically had a nervous breakdown and quit. And so there was a pool of bands like Acid King, for instance, that were all of a sudden homeless. And so in the first week, Ludicra, Yob, Subarachnoid Space, Jarbo, Acid King, Amber Asylum, these bands all kind of came on board right at the very beginning. And at that time, what was important to me was that the bands were on a cool label, like Alternative Tentacles, Relapse, Southern Lord. I just thought if the band has a label partner, I can do the rest of it. 5 years later, I started saying, I don't really care if you have a label at all. You need a publicist, because that was the era where publicists ruled everything.
Yeah, that was a time period. Yeah.
So I was like, you can self-release or whatever, but if you need to have a killer publicist. And now it's more like, I don't care if you have a label or a publicist, but you do need to be good at your social media, because that's how you communicate with people and reach your fans. But more than anything, I have only taken on bands that I just absolutely love and identify with, and that are good people. Like, I don't want to represent assholes, and I don't want to represent a band that's great but that I don't click with. And there have been some real money-making bands I've passed on because it just didn't excite me personally. And it doesn't mean they're not a good band or that they aren't successful or popular, but I feel like, in a way, I have to sell this product, right?
And you're not being true to yourself if you kind of fake it.
Yeah, and I just can't get excited about it. Like, if that was the case, then the only thing I'd be getting excited about was how much money I would make off of it. And that's
Which is exciting, yes.
Yeah, it can be, but I'd rather make money off something that I also love. And so, there were a lot of years in the beginning where it was a very part-time side hustle while I was, originally I was doing 3D animation and design, and then I kind of got out of that to focus more on music. And then for a long time, I was just being a journalist and a DJ, and I was DJing at clubs 3 or 4 nights a week, and it was really cheap to live in Portland at that time.
Right. Cost of living matters for that kind of thing, yeah.
I mean, I had housemates till I was almost 50, so that was a way to save money and, be on the road and know that someone was going to keep the lights on while I was gone. So anyway, time went on, and I just started realizing, like, booking's really going well, and the bands are growing, and more bands want to work with me. And I mean, honestly, I have to turn bands down every single day because there's a shortage of agents and no shortage of bands. And there are bands that I do love and would like to work with that I have to say no to because I'm only one person and I already have 35 clients. And so I have to be really careful when I add someone new because it does take a time away from others. But I did get to a point where I was like, I don't have time to DJ anymore. And journalism, has pretty much died. So those opportunities are pretty much gone. So all of a sudden I found myself, like, oh, I'm a full-time agent and things are going well. And
guess this is what I do. Yeah.
Yeah. and I certainly understand why most people would not want to do this job. Like, you have to have a very specific mindset and skill set to do it well.
Yeah.
But my dream in the very beginning was to get to a point where people trusted me and my taste to the degree that I could say, hey, I just picked up this new band. And they would just be like, great, we want to book them. Like, if they're on Nanotear, we know they're awesome. And I've definitely arrived at that place, and it feels really good. Like, people trust me because I've been an honest businessman for a really long time, and people rarely lose money on my shows. I really, unlike a lot of agents, try to set up shows where the venue wins, the promoter wins, and the bands win.
Everybody's working towards the same goal.
It's like it's not us versus them. It's like, let's work together on this project and make it a success. I've never had a band earn a bonus and had the promoter be upset about it, you know?
Yeah.
So anyway, but so like I picked up this new band from Portland called Rhododendron. They just signed to the Flenser. They're an incredible young trio I've been watching for a couple of years, and people want to book them, you know, A, because they're awesome, and B, because they're just like, oh, okay, they're in your roster, like they must be world class, and they are.
You're like a trusted brand in that way. No, and what you're saying hits such a rings such a bell for me, because it's like the secret for this show, right? Is that, you know, people can try to like parse it all they want, but I don't have anybody on I'm not interested in.
Mm-hmm.
And that might sound obvious, but I'm gonna tell you right now, with the PR world, you get pitched all kinds of things, and some things it's like that would be very popular.
Right.
I don't care about that artist or what they do. Like if I could find like a path into it, maybe it'd be interesting. Like I don't just have people I'm buddies with, obviously, but you know, to me that's the integrity of the show. Like if I were to not,
I want to see your Chapel Roan interview. I think it'll be great.
Yeah, and I feel like I'd be the worst person for that, because it's like I'm barely familiar. You know what I mean? And which doesn't mean I couldn't do a good job, but that's just a different show. The idea behind this show is like, well, it's because I'm who I am and I've lived the kind of life that I've lived. You're gonna get a different kind of conversation that's gonna cut deep on a few ways that other people maybe wouldn't be able to, because they haven't lived that life, or maybe it's in the distant past, or they did it as a lark or a hobby or something. No, it's going to hit different. Now, is it going to be like there's going to be aspects of it that are going to be like unlike other shows? You better believe it. Could you do it now? No, but I started this 12 years ago. So like, whatever, it's what it is. What's my advice is like, don't do what I did. Do what you do. Like find what you do well and lean into that and really like, be open to the understanding of it. In the same way that you're talking about with bands. Like when the plane started, you some songs like I figured it out, and it's okay to figure it out. Everything has to be like burst forth from the head of Zeus, fully formed. No, man, no, it really doesn't. It really doesn't. But I feel like now there's all the pressure to do that, and people are, I gotta get sponsors lined up. Why don't you make sure you have something worth saying first?
Mm-hmm.
Crazy. Anyway, thank you for my TED talk. Sorry, but
no, quality product goes a long way. I mean, I know that I'm much more enthused to do a 2-hour podcast with somebody who knows what they're talking about and asks insightful questions rather than answering some college kid's bullet list of.
So how did you come up with the name? Yeah.
I mean, I've definitely sent people back and be like, look, if you want to know the history of my band, like there's 60 interviews online. You search my name.
Yeah.
Like, don't ask me the same questions. I've been like, do a little bit of research,
Well, look, half the reason I got in this is like being on, these college radio interviews, Peace and Love, where it's like, okay, do we even know who we are? You clearly don't. And this is a waste of everybody's time. So I just take it over basically, because I got to make this interesting for me. And, I'm not saying do that as like a modus operandi, but it does hit a little different. And it's something where I think that kind of thing shines through. It's not going to be everything for everybody, but it's everything for the people who it's for. And I think you've done something very interesting with Nanotear that, you have that trust. You're going to have people's trust. And it's like when you have a good tour manager on a bigger tour. Mm-hmm. People thank you. It's like, well, what's the rest of the week look like for you? Like, like, this is just basic competency. This is just doing your job as far as I'm concerned, and like not being an a-hole while doing it. And somehow that's like, gold star. Okay, well, I guess I'll take it.
I really commend you for booking your own tours. I mean, I think there's nothing cooler than booking your own tours, and I've been booking my own tours for years. And I used to get, when I was doing more local promotion in Portland, which there was a lot more drama in my life because putting on local shows, as as a promoter, like it's not as easy. And so cutting that out and being just an agent and an artist has made me much happier. But
there's like a spider web of complications with like local shows.
and people would, and sometimes I would put on a music festival and I would program my own band and people would give me shit, and I'm just like, what is more DIY than putting on your own music festival or booking your own tours out of your bedroom on your laptop? Like, you're acting like I'm the gatekeeper, but I'm actually just like more DIY than you.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring that up, because it is commonly misunderstood. And again, it's coming from a position of, I feel like there's this engendered mindset of, here's the secrets to win the game. Like here's the cheat
Right.
code to to succeed as a band. It's like, well, no, I mean, first of all, just don't be an a-hole. I mean, you can start with that. Attitude goes a long way. Sticking around goes a long way as well. And just, understanding other people's perspective. Like everyone's, going to be like very busy. If something cool is created, everybody's going to want to be involved with it, especially after it happens. Like I like to say, asleep for the danger, awake for the payday. It works on multiple levels. But if you just ask like the basic elements of critical thinking to it, then you can at least have empathy for like what people are going through. I mean, I'll apply to these big festivals and stuff. It's like, but we don't have like representation. We're not a buzz band. Like, for the most part, unless there's a personal connection, they're not going to pick my band. But I know that because I have to be on the other side of it constantly, where we have to be like, Christ, I can't believe we're turning down bands that are major influences to me, and we just can't fit them in. Can't fit them in. Not enough room. Not enough slots. Right.
Yep.
And that's horrifying. And that's what everybody's dealing with all the time. And it makes everybody drink excessively.
It's good. It's cool that there are enough bands to fill a festival like Caterwaul every year.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
And like what I always say is there should be like 40 of these. There should be a circuit of just these. And there's not, because it's a huge pain in the ass and it's a lot of work. And, you're putting a lot on the line, for the very flakiest of creative individuals. And it's like, you'd be better off putting all your money on black, the roulette wheel. But, there's some things you do for money, some you do for love. That's really what comes down to it. And so getting back to you, I think that's something where, I mean, God, Christ, I dealt with a lot of booking agents, and some of them are, I'm sure, lovely people that have families that love them and friends, I would imagine. But you're like, you got to wonder sometimes. They're like, what is your? Are you like this to like everyone you meet, or do you just not understand there's a human on the other side of this email chain?
I just feel like building bridges is more interesting than burning bridges, and I see some other agents out there just slashing and burning and taking everything they can and just thinking about today and not about tomorrow. And to me, we have this really amazing independent ecosystem, and I want to preserve it, and I want to stimulate it, and I want it to continue to exist. Because especially if we rip off and destroy the independent clubs, that just gives Live Nation a stronger foothold, And I'm not saying I never work with Live Nation, because sometimes that's the only game in town. And there are also some really good people who were in the trenches for decades who work there now. And so sometimes they'll pull some strings to help my bands out and, make it a little bit better of a scenario than it would otherwise be. But I will say I avoid that, 95% of the time.
Right. It should be the exception, not the rule.
It is
sure.
very token exception, but if
I personally benefited from playing at Live Nation venues, right? On tours where it's like, no, we needed to have that cash influx to make the rest of it happen. Does it feel good? No, it does not feel good.
Yep.
And I would like to not have to be in a position that we had to do that, but it's the harsh reality of some places that don't value independent venues.
Yeah, and it's not like every independent...
Or value them too late, where it's like, ship sailed.
It's not like every independent club is owned by a totally altruistic person.
Oh, yeah.
Either.
We have maniacs and shysters in the independent venue world as well, right?
Yeah.
It's all the high seas out there. But it blows my mind when people only kind of look at the material aspects of it as it is now and don't look to the conditions that created that. And it's like,
music's the worst gig to get into for money.
It really
and
is.
Certainly, like Witch Mountains playing doom metal in 1997,
Yeah.
there was no inkling of, we're going to quit our day jobs playing slow doom music. I mean, the fact that there have been several bubbles where that music got somewhat more known and popular has been amazing, but it was not something that we saw in advance. We just thought, this is what we like, this is what we're going to do. And likewise with Point Line Plain, I mean, I think, we would have liked to have reached another level of success just to be able to, be a viable headliner around the country, and to be able to have just that built-in fan base that some of the bands we were supporting were enjoying. And the reality is we needed to stick around a few more years to get there, and we didn't. So now instead it's about our friendship and celebrating the kind of music that we make together and making new music together and seeing what that sounds like.
Which is exciting too, because then you're coming at it with an entire new lived experience. You have years of life as well as creative exploits since then. I mean, you were not a published author when you last did Boy the Mind Playing, which we haven't talked about at all.
That's a really apt point, because I always wanted to be a writer, but when I was, and I, in high school, I wrote a lot of really bad, like Lovecraft and Clive Barker pastiche crap.
Sure. Yeah.
When I was 19, I read this book called Creating Short Fiction by Damon Knight, and in it he says, if you're not at least 30, go out and get some life experience before you become a writer. And obviously there's exceptions, and there are young people who have written brilliant books, so it's not like a hard rule. But I took it to heart, and I was like, okay, because when I was 19, I was precocious, but I was not wise. And so I didn't have insight or experience to draw from for a lot of things. So I actually went out and lived a lot and toured and had many jobs and relationships and careers and traveled. And when I was 40 is when I said, you know what, I know how to not be a hobbyist, and I've always wanted to be a writer. And I've done my apprenticeship as a journalist for however long. So I'm used to working on deadlines and with word counts and with editors. I want to write fiction and do it well. And immediately I started publishing right away. And it had everything to do with being an adult with lived experience and being able to imbue my stories with that. And granted, when I write horror or science fiction, adjacent things, I tend to put a lot more sex, drugs, and rock and roll into it because, I've lived in this rock world.
Yeah, right what you know.
So,
yeah.
And it's just more interesting. I mean, so many genre writers are introverts that are terrified to step outside of their bedroom.
Yeah.
So I feel like that is something that I have to offer. And anyway, long story short, I agree that having experience, it informs your art. And so, yes, I think that whatever Josh and I do as New Point Line Plain Music was going to benefit from the thousands of more shows that we've seen and albums that we've listened to and books we've read and movies we've gone to and just lives
the world
that
that you've lived in, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and not to interrupt your flow at all, but it's a hard thing, especially for, I think, young men in our society to understand, of just no, I know you think you know it all. I know you think you've got it all figured out, but you kind of need to get your dick kicked in the dirt a little bit. You need to be out there. And if you're not, it's going to come across everyone thinks they're the exception that proves the rule. It's well, then there wouldn't be a rule, would there?
Mm-hmm. I also think, it's important to point out that a lot of our favorite bands did make great music when they were young, and then it's, de-evolution takes hold and they seem less creative as they go on. But I think that has a lot to do with sort of the stunted development of people that get successful early on. They sort of remain in that place, and they're not just out working a job and living life. They're sort of in this weird, fantasy world for a long time. And so, you get to be Mick Jagger at 79 and he's eaten at the best restaurants and he's dated a lot of beautiful women, but what does he have to say anymore?
Yeah, he doesn't work at a job where his boss is an a-hole,
right?
It's he doesn't have any of those experiences. Well, and that's perfect example. You get Killing Joke writing songs about how poor first class service is not acceptable in an airplane. It's oh yeah, real relatable, dude, real relatable.
Yeah.
No wonder Martin Atkins came in and set him straight. It's what are you doing? What is this? And I love Killing Joke. Killing Joke's great, and they deserve all the success that they got and so much more. But it's also that's not relatable though. Nobody cares about that. Nobody even understands that problem. No one wants to hear a song about it.
That's funny. I didn't even know about that, but I'll have to look that
Oh,
up.
it was one of my favorite stories of when I was lucky enough to have Martin Atkins on, and now that guy's got a million of them, as you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I think that's interesting. That Bukowski didn't start writing until he was 35. You know.
Yeah.
There's all these like great examples of it, but we're trained in this culturally to think of this early success, discovered genius, so on and so on, that like that's like the rule, not the exception. It's like, no, it really isn't.
Well, and too often those early successes, they're rich kids, like the reason that they can do that is because they have that financial support. And unfortunately, we've lost that sort of apprenticeship that's why you don't have Renaissance level painters anymore. People aren't taught to paint from the age of 2. And likewise, the bands that the Beatles or Black Sabbath, they went to Hamburg and played 6 sets a day, 7 nights a week for months.
The craft of it, not just the art, but the craft of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so we're expected, by society, to just work on this on evenings and weekends as a hobby and yet to become world class. And we're also expected of that by DIY culture, because a lot of DIY people think if you're trying to make a living at music that you've sold out, that if you're charging more than $5 for a show, you're doing something wrong, and that if you're dedicating your life to your art, that you're missing the point in some way. And I just feel like sometimes that is the most anti-art stance, is to be against somebody having a career.
Well, and a lot of that stems off of it was that 90s, the selling out argument, right? Which, by the way, you try to explain that to a younger person now, like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, it's like the concept itself has been lost to history, but it still permeates in, folks around our age, our age group, where it's like, what? Look. All right. And it's like the same thing where it's like there are larger bands that, am I personally like really into them? No, but they're getting kids interested in the music. So it's not like the children of men of musical genres where they're just like everyone aging out with nobody new coming in. So like you're getting mad at them because it isn't exactly your sensibilities. Why would it be to your sensibility?
Right. I was the wrong age when Slipknot came out, but they still made probably the most aggressive, intense, multi-platinum album ever that drew millions of kids into listening to death metal and thrash.
And if that's their gateway drug, right? Or however you want to phrase it, that's their gateway into like weirder music. Okay. At least you got here. Do I like Korn? No. Not at all. I hated it from the very beginning. But like I know there are bands that I like that like, really love some of those early Korn things. I'm like, cool. That sounded exactly like Bakersfield to me. Insult.
I know some young I work with some bands that are 10 or so years younger than me, maybe a little more, and they grew up on Korn and
they all love it. Yeah.
And whereas I saw Korn as the opener for Ozzy in '95 and just loathed it. Like when he said knick knack paddywhack, give a dog a bone, I was like, you're dead to me. I'll never watch the band ever again.
Well, and it's so funny because but like somehow I can reconcile like, all right, I don't like that at all, but whatever it did for you, you are making this thing that I do like. And so as long as I don't need to listen to it with you, like whatever,
right.
I can have like we can have an accord on this. And Korn is like one of the less odious ones as well, but it's like I don't want to hear about Limp Bizkit ever. Sorry. Let's not rehabilitate that. Thank you.
Well, I have to share the embarrassment that a Portland radio station broke Limp Bizkit, and it was through this legal payola loophole where they were paying for ad time but playing their songs.
Oh, wow. Last gasp of the old school payola market. Yeah,
there was a New York Times article about it. Payola's back, but this time it's legal. And because I remember I was driving down Hawthorne at 4 p.m. and Counterfeit came on the radio, and I pulled over. I was like, what is going on? There's like death metal vocals on the station that plays Aerosmith and Metallica.
Yeah.
And I went and bought the album it was in the dollar bin already. And
some other poor bastard had the same reaction.
And I took it home and listened to it, and I was like, oh, never mind. I went and got my $1 back.
Like, I'm needing my money back from this. Thank you.
Yeah.
No, but that's, I mean, yeah, like, and that's a whole separate conversation in and of itself.
Yeah.
And the creative viability of payola enabled new metal. But it's something that I guess to a certain degree, there's a certain mindset that says, well, it's famous, so it must be good. And like, I don't agree with that at all. That just means it's big. It doesn't mean it's good. There's all kinds of stuff that's terrible.
There was just that New York Times list of the 30 greatest living songwriters.
Dude, I wouldn't even click on it. I'm like, I already know this is going to make me mad.
It's not that I want to argue with the inclusion of anyone on there. It's just that they're all major label artists. And it's like, why is John Darnielle of the Mountain Goats not on this list of 30 greatest songwriters? Oh, because he's decided to stay independent. I just think that that's awful. Like, and I see it over and over again where people equate popular success with quality, and like it's like saying the best burger is at McDonald's, you know?
Right, exactly. No, it's just the most readily available one. Doesn't mean it's the best one. I mean, it's which isn't to say that things can't become hugely popular and be very good. That has happened, but it's
I thought the Barbie movie was brilliant. You know,
I agree.
The Barbie movie was a huge piece of surrealism that made it into the pop culture, and it happens sometimes, and not often enough.
It should be celebrated when it does happen, but like, let's not kid ourselves. It's not that often.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, and that's, like whatever. As I often say on this show, you'll go broke catering to my sensibility, right? In film and music and books, anything.
Yeah.
I'm an esoterist, really. And I'm perfectly fine with that. And, to a certain degree, the music I make is probably more populist than my actual tastes, but it doesn't matter because it's like how art goes is the perception of it from the audience is more important than what matters to the artist most times. And
I think the big epiphany for me with that was I was at South by Southwest with Two Ton Boa, and we played this Kill Rock Stars showcase, and I think Thurston Moore came and watched us set, and I was riding the bus back to our hotel, and everyone on one side of the bus was Hispanic, and everyone on the other side of the bus was black, and I was like, none of these people know who Thurston Moore is or care an ounce about the fact that a member of Sonic Youth came to see my band. Like,
they wouldn't even have any frame of reference. You would take 20 minutes explaining why that was relevant, why it was interesting, why someone would care. Yeah, absolutely.
And they're not wrong. I'm just saying, like, Sonic Youth, who we consider royalty in a certain sense, because of good work that they did and great music that they made, like, even they, they're not millionaires.
Yeah.
And it's just never going to matter to most people. And I feel like you have to embrace the fact that the art that you make is for a really, really niche audience, like a micro niche audience. And I'm fine with that because the niche audience is nerds that like esoteric art.
Yeah, people just like us, right? Yeah, exactly. Yep. And they're all devastatingly beautiful, handsome, and hyper intelligent as well.
Yep.
But I mean, I also thought one of the many stories I tell, I always run into these because we're out there and doing it, and we play with different bands, and there are bands that it's like clearly influenced by Carp, and I'll be like, how did you find this? How did you find this music? And in a lot of cases, they'll be under some mistaken impression that Carp was like as big as Smashing Pumpkins or something. It's like, no, I assure you that was not the case. That was absolutely not the case.
Look at the Acid Bath reunion.
Sure. I mean, like, who thought Acid Bath would be hitting? I mean, I even think those guys seem to be surprised by that, where it's like good for them,
Yeah, I'm very happy for them, especially because so many of my clients have gotten to play on those big shows. They've been sharing the wealth considerably. But that was a band that was like a very little known band. I mean, I was aware of them because I was in the Doom scene, but they weren't.
Look at
playing
Refused playing these arenas. Refused, where it's like, I was like, oh yeah, it's like, all right, I get what these guys are coming from. I like Fugazi too, but but like the records are great.
If you're an 18-year-old goth girl now, like, there's no difference in your mind between Acid Bath and Alice in Chains. It's just like, this is 90s music that I get to see that I didn't get to see because I wasn't born. So put Point Line Plain on your list.
Right, exactly. Well, and that's the nice thing about all this instant availability, right? Is everything it's never going to be an even playing field, but it is enough of an even playing field that stuff that didn't get its chance to have a day in the sun, so to speak, can have a moment that everything at the same volume means everything's at the same volume, and it's never going to be you're not going to go out touring arenas or anything because of it, probably. But look at the freaking the freaking Quebec band with the polka dots
Right.
in them, right?
Yep.
That all happened like while we were out on tour. I'm like, what is? I've seen this image show up like 17 times every time I've looked at like the internet, and like that hasn't been that often. Like, what is this? And I finally watched it. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it's cool. I'm happy
It
for
is
them.
cool. I played with like 40 bands that sounded like that in Replicator, and it was
I
great.
think what hurts my feelings is that if 10% of those people that are excited about that band would just listen to Voivod, the world would be a better place.
Right, exactly. Or yeah, absolutely, dude. Yeah, where it's like, okay, so if you like this, you should check out Orthrealm, or like whatever, or we could go for something more innocuous, right? Like it could be, like anything. Like no, have you heard of No Means No?
Right.
Like any of these things where it's like, oh, can we just have like a pathway to get a little bit of that going this way?
I mean, No Means No is another band that, almost is relegated to history, which is unfortunate because they're gods. I mean, seeing the Wrong tour in 1990 is a huge reason I still make music, because I remember seeing, it was the Wrong tour for No Means No, and then Jesus Lizard Liar tour a year or two later. I was like, oh,
Wow.
grown-ups can play punk music better than kids. I didn't realize that, and that was a big moment for me too. I was like, okay, you can actually just keep getting better at this, and it's not just something that you do when you're a teenager.
Well, and I love all the Dead Bobs stuff so much. I was lucky enough we got to do some shows with them because I was like, fuck,
Awesome.
we get to play. Like the fact that this is happening is blowing my mind right now. Where it's like, and then they busted loose some No Means No songs live. I'm like, all right, this is already badass.
So
I already
cool.
just love the band and everything they do, but the fact they're doing this too is, all these, a bunch of dudes with receding hairlines having orgasms in the middle of the club, right? But why not? Right?
Yep.
Great. Life is a hellscape without end. Like, let's have a little bit of a catharsis now and again.
I've certainly been catching as many of the, legacy acts as I can the last 10 years or so, because a lot of these bands are not getting any younger. And, it's hard on the body, and sometimes the voice isn't the same, or sometimes they get a younger drummer. But generally, as a guitarist, you don't get worse as you get older.
Yeah.
So a lot of these bands I'm going to see are just still like throwing down.
Yeah, and there's certainly, I think there's a sniff test for all of it, but I'm now at the point where even if someone like, all right, that's not for me, it's like, I'm not hating on it. Like, good for them. I hope they make all the money that they can for the people that want to see it. But it's all the better when it's something where it's like, wow, that was really freaking good. That was like, life affirmingly good, and like, reminder, that you can still do punk rock or whatever it is, weird music at like after 19 or whatever, and it makes sense.
I know. I'm thrilled to get to see Dazzling Killmen in a couple of weeks.
I'm so stoked.
I heard of them right after they broke up, basically.
Yeah. I never saw them, and they were right down the line too. I even got Replicator, even got like early comparisons to Dazzling Killmen. It's like I wish I could say they were an influence. I found out about them like way too late. It was just one of those things that I was in the West Coast, as for you.
Some of the guys in Witch Mountain were in another band before called Iomi Stubbs, and they played the Dazzling Killmen show in Portland that Nick says is the best show that Dazzling Killmen ever played. That's awesome. At Satyricon. And so they told me all about it. So I heard that record pretty early on, but it was like I had just, 97, they were just gone.
Yeah. I mean, same thing. I got in Drive Like Jehu 6 months after they broke up.
Oh, yeah. I did get to see them with, it was the week Unwound Fake Train came out. They were opening for Jehu in Vancouver, BC, and I saw them together, and that was a really good show.
Yeah, Unwound was one I was lucky enough to see a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Back then, but yeah, it's funny how that works, man. It's and it's weird to even try to explain now, because I feel like every record was like a message in a bottle sometimes, and it's like, it just isn't that way anymore. But it really, like, you had to have someone that they made you a tape that like, wow, what is this?
I think that's why I gravitate so much toward live music. I mean, and prefer being an agent. Like, I thank myself every day that I started an agency and not a record label, because it is a really tough climate to sell records anymore. But I just feel like you can't download a live concert experience, and
that's true.
I love going out to see shows still, and I don't hear a lot of new albums that really move me and excite me I'm not saying they aren't being made. I am not making a concerted effort to find all the best albums that are being made. But I do make an effort to go see live music all the time. And I think a lot of my favorite records that I'm discovering are from a long time ago. But I'm seeing live music all the time that blows my mind. And so that's the experience I enjoy.
And that's great, and that that keeps you connected to it. That reminds you why you do it. Because there's always going to be someone somewhere that's going to have their mind kicked in by some awesome band that they were like, I had no idea who this was, and like now I can't get enough of it. Right? If you're in a band and you're doing anything remotely correctly, you will have that experience. On that the people seeing you will have that experience, and then those people would convert into fans. And that's the way it should work, and we don't need these algorithms serving us up. Oh, you like this? Here's something that sounds exactly like that. Well, no,
right.
that isn't what I want at all. I don't want it to sound exactly like this.
I mean, that's what's great about the algorithm of this show or my radio show. It's like you've got a curator who is a nerd that's done the work for you. And is serving up all kinds of different things, and you see what you vibe with. Like on my radio show, it's hard rock and heavy metal, but I do not play the hits.
Yeah,
so
it's all the deep cuts and kind of that weird song. I forgot about. Yeah, that's awesome.
It's either bands that didn't have good managers, that made an album in 1975, or underground bands that Sepultura is never going to be on the radio because they're just too brutal. And likewise, Judas Priest, they made 20 albums. Why do we need to hear Breaking the Law or You Got
the same 3 songs?
Ever again?
That are great songs. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, it's like they have other ones though. You know that, right?
This idea that Black Sabbath has 3 or 4 canonical songs is just absurd.
Oh yeah.
They made so many good songs, and so anyway.
I mean, I even love Sabotage. That's a great record.
Sabotage, I think, is arguably their best.
Canonically has now been re-entered into the canon because people would be first 5. I'm like, first 5, first 6. What are we talking about?
It really is the first 6, and I'm also
the guitar sound on that record is so nasty. I love it, and it's so different too. And it's
the best production they ever had, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm glad that one has somehow the zeitgeist has reappropriated Sabotage.
Here's a Point Line Plain story. I always loved Sabotage, but I think when I really fell in love with it, there was a time on a Point Line Plain tour we were driving through the Wisconsin Dells, and it was a long day, and we had the day off to get to wherever we were going, and it was like the sun was setting, and we needed to find a hotel, and we rolled into the Dells, and there was a hotel that was shaped like a castle. And we were like, that's where we're staying.
Yeah.
And we checked in. There was literally like a suit of armor in the lobby. We're like, this is great. Checked into our room, each took a hit of acid, and then went to this warm water theme park that was built in there of water slides. And
there's a lot of those there.
Started peeking in there. And then another family came in, and we couldn't handle it because we were too high. So we go back to the room and just laid on the bed and listened to the entire Sabotage album.
Hell yeah.
And I just feel like I became one with that record that night. And then after that, we went and ran around in these cornfields at night that were behind the hotel and walked around on this golf course where there was this owl hooting. And it was just a very special trip. But definitely every time I hear Sabotage, I'm taken back to that castle-shaped hotel.
I love that. That's great. It's not going to get much better than that. Nate, this has been awesome, man. So tell me, I'll put all the tour dates in the show notes, all that good stuff. Where's the best place for people to find out about Point Line Plain stuff? Instagram and all that?
So we ended up with Point Line Plain Band is pretty much, that's the Gmail, that's the Instagram. I think that's the Facebook as well. So the only thing that we actually got Point Line Plain is the link tree, but everything else is Point Line Plain Band.
There you go. Linktree. It makes you wonder about that. Remember the GeoCities web rings that they used to have? They'd have the counter with the GIF. Oh, we get so many visitors that it's going crazy. Yeah, like that.
I think I had a tripod account.
A tripod, like us. That's right. Yeah. I remember all these. The North
in
remembers.
fact, it was the first metal band that I played in before Witch Mountain was called Bronze. We were only around for about 9 months, but we had a tripod account, and the one other metal band on tripod was from Virginia, and they were called Burn the Priest. And we were messaging each other about maybe doing a split 7-inch, and then it never came together. And then we broke up, and they became Lamb of God.
Wow.
I wish we would have made that split 7.
Yeah, no joke, right? Awesome, Nate. It's been great talking to you. Last question. This is the last thing I ever ask people. It's the only canned question I ever ask on the show. Choose to interpret it however you like.
Okay.
Why do you do what you do?
I guess I'm doing all the things that I've always loved, you know? Like when I was a kid, I was a nerd that was into dinosaurs and science fiction and weird stuff, and I spent a lot of time in the woods with a wooden sword. And the fact that I can spend my days helping artists have successful careers, and as a fringe benefit, it kind of keeps me active in the scene and able to do the things that I do. I've been to like 30 countries that I didn't have to pay for myself to go there. And I write horror and science fiction books and stories. I do the things that I've always loved. And I have friends from childhood who I haven't seen in 30 or 40 years, and they're just like, damn, you're doing all the things that you talked about doing when you were a kid. And I'm like, yeah, I never had unachievable goals. I didn't want to be an astronaut or the president or, you know, a rich oligarch. You know, I just wanted to have fun and do the things that I like, and that's what I'm doing. And I feel like I'm able to do it in a moral way where I'm helping people around me and, you know, spreading joy, like creating, like booking 1,000 shows a year. Those are all events that people go to and enjoy themselves and forget about their worries for a while. I mean, you could say that it's escapist, I guess, but I think a certain amount of escapism is necessary in the current world. So to me, we live in a kind of banal, terrible reality. So the more time that you can spend escaping into a book or rocking out at a concert and just enjoying the moment that you're in, hopefully not through your phone, is good.
Right on, brother. Well, I'll be seeing you pretty soon. So
I'm looking forward to that so much. You get to see the 8th show of 8, so like we should be at our best.
Should be running hot. I'm looking forward to it. All right,
Cool.
Nate. Take care, man.
Yeah, thank you so much.
There he goes, Nate Carson. What a cool guy. We're gonna hear some Point Line Plain. Play us out with something off of the sometimes maligned second record. This is Descender. There you go. A little point line playing for you. That was Descender off the Smoke Signals record. You can pick that up on their Bandcamp, pointlineplaying.bandcamp.com. There's a CD available, for that. And then, there's also Skin Graft is doing a reissue. They're all great. So you can, of course, catch them at Caterwall. What do we call Caterwall? Coming up, depending on when you're listening to this in the time of your personal timeline. But they are doing stuff. So highly suggest go and see Point Line playing. All right, so this has been Neutron's Protonic Reversal. Thank you so very much for listening to it. The show happens Thursdays, 8 Eastern, 7 Central, 6 Mountain, 5 Pacific. Streaming live. Podcasted later everywhere. Always free, no ads, no sponsors, no kidding. ProtonicReversal.com. However, if you like the show and you want to get episodes sooner, just like this one, Patreon.com/ProtonicReversal. $1 a month advances that goal and helps keep the lights on this joint. It's deeply appreciated. Thanks to everyone for liking the episodes and the various social media things, following, subscribing on your platform of choice. Even leaving a review. All that helps people discover the show. And that's just a darn nice thing to do, and I deeply appreciate it. So back at it. Year 13. I've got lots more cool stuff coming up. I'm not going to talk about some of it until it happens. How about that? How's that for a hook? But, stay tuned. A lot of good stuff coming. Anything else? I don't think so. Just stay safe out there, as always.
Microphone turns sound into electricity.
And as always, catch you later.
Out on Route 128, dark and lonely. I got my radio on. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Welcome to my top 10. I'd like to thank our sponsor. But we haven't got a sponsor. Not if you were the last man on earth. She was prepared to prove it. This one goes out to a special girl. But there is no special girl. It's the end of radio. The last announcer plays the last record. The last what? Leaves the transmitter. Circles the globe in search of a listener. Can you hear me now? really broadcasting if there's no one there to receive. It's the end of radio. As we come to the close of our broadcast day, got my radio on. Can you hear me now? This is a test! If this had been a real emergency,